Bonjour tout le monde.
Bonjour, bonjour.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Bonjour.
Bon, je laisse. So. So maybe we can wait 2 or 3 minutes more to get people in. Good morning.
Good morning.
So maybe we can start. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this presentation on VAT, an issue at the heart of the Brexit. We are delighted to welcome this morning EY team to give us an overview on the new VAT obligations of the economic operators and the skills needed to approach the exchanges with French and European-based platforms. This morning we welcome Olivier Galerno, Bertie Lindsay, and Pauline Girard. So at the end of the presentation, if you have got questions, please, you can use the chat or raise your hand, and I will ask the question or hand you over. So, Pauline,
yeah,
the floor is yours.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Yes, so we are Olivier Galerno, Bertie Lindsay, and myself, Pauline Girard. So we are lawyers in the VAT team of EY Avocats. Our clients for all VAT aspects and mainly territoriality rules. So yeah, we are used to the VAT aspects of the Brexit. So today our session is dedicated to the VAT impacts of the Brexit mainly for UK businesses, because we already did one session, I think it was in March, last March, mainly dedicated to the French businesses having relationship with the UK. So yeah, we will focus on the consequences for UK sellers. So if you have maybe some questions because you are a French seller having activities in UK, maybe we can chat at the end of the presentation. So when we are talking about VAT consequences of the Brexit, of course, when we are talking about VAT, we usually split the consequences between supply of goods and supply of services. So our presentation would, of course, make this distinction, and we will also make some comments about the VAT compliance rules for UK businesses. So what are the impacts of the Brexit in terms of VAT compliance, and of course in terms of VAT deduction and VAT refunds. So so of course we will communicate you the slides at the end of the presentation. So here we just indicated a timeline, so the key dates of the Brexit. So for 2021, the main changes would mainly concern the e-commerce package. Like you know, as from July 1st this year, we would have a quite important reform for B2C, so business to customer relationship in terms of goods and services. So we would have the occasion to talk about this reform in a few minutes. And of course, we wanted also to talk about, when we talk about the VAT consequences of the Brexit, what is important to detail is the VAT territoriality rules, because as you know, so we have the Northern Ireland Protocol, because Northern Ireland in terms of VAT would have as particular status because the EU regulator wanted to protect the whole island and preserve the commercial relationship with Ireland. So just to briefly summarize, in terms of VAT territoriality rules, Great Britain, of course, is now becoming export territory. So no matter if we are talking about goods or services and B2B relationship or B2C relationship, it includes Channel Island. It includes also Man Island, which would also be seen as export territory. I think we had some question about these territories in the first presentation, so it is important to note this point. And yeah, for Northern Ireland, the particular status implies that for supply of goods, Northern Ireland would still be considered as being part of the EU, because we still have the intra-EU deliveries, intra-EU supplies regime applicable, and also for B2C relationships, the distance selling. But on the contrary, for services, it would not be the same, because for supply of services, Northern Ireland would be considered as a third-party territory. So a Northern Irish businesses selling services, for example, to a business in France, would not apply VAT, but it does not change that much, because it was already the case when UK was still in the EU. And for the B2C rules, we would have the new OSS, so one-stop shop regime for the non-EU regime, if the services are taxable in the EU. And also for Northern Ireland, what is important to notice is that the VAT number, the structure of the VAT number would change, because we would have at the beginning of the VAT numbers the prefix XI. And we would not really discuss about the relationship between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but it can also have some impacts. Just to briefly explain, this relationship would be considered as import and export, but VAT should be charged on it. So here on that slide, it's the main changes that we would develop in a few minutes. So the first one is mainly related to the VAT registration obligation of UK businesses, of course, and do they need a fiscal representative in France to do some business in France. The second one is regarding the EORI registration. So again, to import in France, do the UK businesses need an EORI number? So we will discuss about that. We will discuss about the new terms of VAT refund claims, which is really important. Of course, we are talking about money. After that, we would maybe make a quick focus on the impact of the Brexit on triangular transaction. After that, we will talk about the one-stop shop. So mainly in the context of the e-commerce reform. We would not develop the contract on legal agreement aspects, but as you can imagine, the Brexit has a lot of consequences on that matter, because it can have impact, for example, depending on the Incoterms that would be used, and it can create some obligation for UK businesses in France or in the EU. And another topic that would not develop, because what we would like to talk about is mainly export from UK and import in France, but on the other sense, we can also have UK businesses making some export from France to the rest of the world or to UK. And for that, we have a new regulation applicable since October 2020, which is related to the EU exporter status from a custom standpoint. Because now, if you are not established in the EU customs territory, you cannot anymore act as an EU exporter from a custom perspective. So you should appoint another company who would deal all this aspect and act for you as a custom exporter. But it does not change anything for VAT. It's mainly related to to customs. And our first part would be dedicated to the supply of goods for B2B relationship.
Yes, so I will present this part. For this, we took the example of a UK company exporting from the UK and importing in France. So we will present the requirements to carry out these transactions. By example, for exporting from the UK, the business can be established in France, in the UK, or elsewhere. There is no particular requirement for this. No customs or fiscal representative is required for UK and French companies exporting from the UK. So this is an important point, and I think most of companies involving in these transactions were asking this question at the time of the Brexit, and the answer is no. However, valid EORI number is required. This is particularly important when customs is involved, which is the case now with the UK. And in principle, a UK VAT number is also required. An exemption is possible if the company only performs exports from the UK, but it's a simplification, so it needs to be asked for automatic. As is the case in France, EU rules are still applicable in the UK, since a mandatory documentation is needed for the VAT exemption on exports. Because, yes, I didn't remind it, but in principle, exports from the UK are exempt from VAT, from UK VAT, under conditions. And the first condition is to be in possession of documents, the main one being the customs documents. as is the case in France when your company exports from France. And of course, additional requirements are necessary, should be met for goods subject to excise duties, like oil, tobacco, or alcohol. And there is another requirement. We are not used to it in France, but the goods will need to leave the UK within 3 months of the date of the supply. This is an important point, and we don't have it in mind in France because there is no such requirement, but in the UK you have this. So it's a bit scholar, it's a list of the requirements, but I think it's important because before last January it was just intra-EU deliveries of goods, and now we have just customs considerations to keep in mind.
So more formalities, actually.
More formalities, exactly. And yeah. And it's the same for imports compared to intra-EU acquisitions. The requirements are a bit more important. Numerous. So for imports in France, a UK company, the company should be either established in France, or if it's not the case, if it's a UK company which is not established in France, an indirect customs representative should be appointed. This is very important, and this is a quite big burden because customs agents are not always able to act as indirect representatives. So we had many issues on this, and this is important since to import in France, the declarant must be established in the EU, and if it's not the case, the declarant must be a customs agent, and for non-EU companies, a customs agent should be an indirect representative and not a direct one. And often it's easier to find a direct representative compared to indirect, because of course indirect representative is a bit more involved since it's liable for the payment. And for exports, there is no VAT payment in principle, but for imports, since there is customs and VAT, import VAT payments, the indirect representation is a bit
because they are liable to the duties in case of failure.
But this is required for non-EU companies.
So UK one.
So UK one, yeah. A valid EORI number is required without surprise. And in principle, to date, no French VAT ID is required for the sole need of imports. If the UK company only performs imports in France, it does not require to be VAT registered. And yes,
that will change.
And yes, the VAT reverse charge, but that will change because as from 1st January 2022, the reverse charge mechanism on import VAT will be mandatory for all companies. So to be able to report import transactions and to pay import VAT, a company will need to be VAT registered in France, because now import VAT is in principle paid at the customs at the time of the goods are introduced in France, and then import VAT is recovered either through domestic VAT return or through the 8th directive process or the 13th directive process. And the import VAT reverse charge mechanism was optional with an application to submit with the customs. And as from 1st January 2022, the import VAT reverse charge mechanism won't be optional, but will be mandatory. So UK companies importing in France will be VAT registered in France. Now this is a focus on the formalities, the customs formalities. So for export formalities, the first question to ask is who will make export declaration? Because in the UK, it seems that even a French company can declare export transactions. So there is a choice between the self-filling or customs broker. It's necessary to prepare the invoice to be sent with the goods, because now this is a non-EU rules, so it's the rules are applicable to documents accompanying the goods for export and imports, and rules can be different. No VAT should be charged on the invoice, in principle, as stated on the previous slides, under conditions. And important point, no intrastate return are due anymore for these flows. So all the transactions between UK and France before Brexit were reported naturally in the intrastate returns, and this is not the case anymore. For import formalities now in France, the same question for who will make import declaration, even if there is not so much choice actually, because UK companies need to appoint an indirect representative, so this person will make import declaration. The same question for the documentation and data requirements for imports, at least the invoice, but for import of its own goods, it's not always the case. There is not always an invoice, a sale invoice. So I think under commercial rules and customs rules, pro forma invoice is required, at least, like a document with the actually like an invoice, even if it's not a sale invoice. So, and important point, the payment of import VAT. It may be the exporter or the importer. Basically, when there is a sale, the easier way to pay import VAT is to the UK company exports the goods from the UK, and the French company, by example, imports the goods in France. And it's the French company is indicated in box 8 of the customs document, meaning that it's the recipient of the good and meaning that it's the importer. But depending on the Incoterm, by example, with DDP, when you export from the UK under the DDP Incoterm, you're supposed to make the customs clearance in France, meaning that you are the exporter from the UK and the importer in France, which can be a bit heavy for UK company to make both. So
arrangement should be checked, because when it was still intra-EU deliveries, the consequences were not the same. But now, if you are under DDP Incoterm, it could imply that you, as a UK business, would be liable for the VAT and customs payment at the border. So yeah, of course, it can be easy.
Exactly. Yeah, and I saw this with clients. Some clients just impose this to the supplier to act with DDP Incoterm, meaning that due to Brexit there is no customs implication for the customer. Yeah. So if your company supplies some goods under this Incoterm, it should be paid attention to this. And the last point is the customs duties. So it was uncertainties about customs duties until Christmas, before the agreement. So in principle, there are customs duties, and this may be checked based on the nomenclature, on the
Customs tariff.
On the customs tariff, and it may be customs duties, commodity codes, exactly. And there is it can be checked actually on the UK side, HMRC, or on the French side, RITA, to check if customs duties apply. And I checked many times, and I could see that most of the times there is no customs duty, but sometimes it may be. And if there is, the benefit of the agreements concluded between the UK and the EU may be asked. Yeah. So this is it's so important because customs duties are not recoverable. So it can be interesting. Now focus on the VAT consequences. So actually the VAT treatment of the transaction does not change since intra-EU deliveries are in principle exempt from VAT. An export is in principle exempt from VAT as well. So invoice for an export transaction from the UK should be zero rated. With the conditions we already indicated, that goods are removed from the UK within the 3 months and the documentation is installed by the company. As indicated, in case the ex-works Incoterm is used, the UK business should ensure that that the customs documentation is forwarded by the client. This is important because in practice, clients, when the ex-works is used, never send the customs documents. And there are also other implications, like, by example, triangulation simplification, which was possible with UK company, of course, because it was an EU country, is no longer possible. Since from French standpoint, based on the EU VAT directive, to apply the triangular simplification, the 3 entities involved should be established in the EU and in different countries, but in the EU. So the simplification could not apply. I don't know if your company is involved in such case or in such simplification, but this should be checked.
So the safe harbor maybe to have a company in Northern Ireland, because for Northern Ireland, for supply of goods, it's still considered as established in the EU. So yeah, to move your business or create an entity if triangular simplification is really important for you.
Yeah, to avoid actually a VAT registration for the UK company in country of departure of the goods of the country of arrival. And even if there is another Irish company existing, it's possible maybe to just use this EU VAT number, or to, in practice, it's not as simple, but it may be contemplated. I think we are done with supply of goods for the overview.
B2B.
For B2B, of course.
So for B2C, it's also a big part. Yeah, so if you are a UK company supplying goods to a private individual established or domiciled in France or in the EU, so of course, before January 1st, this sale, when the goods were moving from UK to France, were subject to the intra-EU distance sales regime, which enabled the UK supplier to apply either VAT in UK or in the arrival member states, depending on the exceedance of a threshold. So this would still be possible for Northern Irish businesses, but not for businesses established in Great Britain. So now, so between 1st January this year and 1st July this year, the rules would be that these sales should be treated as an export in the UK and an import in France. So the requirement explained by Bertie would, in a sense, be applicable, but of course it would also depend who will act as importer of record in France, because if it is the private individual, so if you decide to move the customs formalities to your client in France for the imports, of course the private individual would not have to get an EORI number, for example. So yeah, before 1st July, we had customs exemption. So for small value deliveries, because for imports of goods with a negligible value comprised between 10 and 22 euros in the EU, no VAT should apply. So in France, we made the choice to apply the 22 euro threshold. And for customs, it is 150 euros. So under this threshold, no customs duties should apply. Actually, for this kind of transaction, so again, export, import, but sales to a B2C customer, there is no particular simplified custom data set. So it's a kind of normal customs declaration. And also for customs, we have opened to UK businesses the centralized custom clearance procedure, which allow to make the custom clearance only in one EU country, even if there is sales to different EU member states. And as of 1st January, and Bertie would explain in more detail, the import VAT is usually recoverable through 13th directive, except if you are VAT registered in France or in other EU countries for other reason than for the import, because for the import, it's not mandatory to be VAT registered. And so the main changes would be as of July 1st, because as of this date, we would have the implementation of the new e-commerce package. So it is a big change for companies having transaction with private individual customers. And especially because we would have the implementation of the one-stop shop regime, which was already available for companies making supplies, telecom supplies, electronic services. So this was already available, but now it would be extended, and especially to this kind of transactions, so imports. So this kind of transaction for B2C relationship would have a specific name. Now it should be called distance sales of imported goods. And for that, so instead of being registered in all countries where you are making business, you can use the one-stop shop regime, which enables you to pay directly VAT of all member states where you are importing goods. We have also the removal of the 22 euro VAT exemption. It won't be applicable anymore. Now the threshold would also be, like for custom, 150 euros. But under this regime, the e-commerce rules would apply, and above this threshold, they will not apply. So it's going to be a normal import in France without the simplification. So for example, without the use of IOSS. In terms of custom declaration, we would have a new custom data set, which is a simplified data set called the H7. The centralized custom clearance would not be applicable anymore if you do not use the IOSS. So in that case, you should use the transit custom regime of the transit procedure. So if you are importing goods in one country, for example, in France, and after that you move your goods to, for example, Germany, it's not, well, you can do that if you use the IOSS, or if you don't want to use the IOSS, you should put in place a custom transit. And regarding import VAT, so import refund claim, it doesn't change. It's still going to be the 13 directive process. So just a focus on the IOSS. So member states have been asked to open their own portal to businesses in last April. So in France, it was 22 April. So now it is open. So if you want to register to the IOSS and broadly speaking to the OSS regime, which is also applicable for sales in the EU. So for example, if you are a UK business and you are performing distance sales, meaning if you are performing sales to private individual in Germany from France, it's still the regime, the distance sales regime will still continue to apply. So for that transaction, the one-stop shop could also be open to you as a UK business. Yeah, if you are a UK business, you can be, like we explained, liable to pay import VAT. So if you are seen as the importer of record. And what is important to note is that contrary to other countries in EU, especially I am thinking about Belgium, in France, it should not be mandatory if you want to use the IOSS to appoint a fiscal representative in France. So you can do it on your own. So it's quite important. And because it is an obligation country per country, it's not harmonized in the EU. So it is really important, depending on where you are importing your products, to check if to use the IOSS, you would need to appoint a fiscal rep. But in France, well, French tax authorities did not communicate on that, but they communicate on after the Brexit on the cases where UK businesses should appoint a VAT rep, and it's only for to perform the VAT refund claim. So actually, to use OSS or IOSS, it should not be mandatory. So now we would like to take a practical example of sale of distance sale of imported goods. So what you are probably also aware of is that the rules would not be the same depending of if you are the direct seller to the private customer, or if to sell your goods, you are involving an online marketplace, so platform. So the rules would be totally different because usually if you consider that an online marketplace is involved in the transaction, it would be the online marketplace that would be liable for VAT on the distance sale. So it is quite important. So like I said, the e-commerce rules for VAT only apply when the goods are less than 150. So if you are importing goods in France and the value of your good is less than 150, you have two choices. You can use the IOSS or not. If you are using the IOSS, so it's quite easy, and it's the purpose of the regime actually to ease the VAT payment. So the place of supply would be France. The import of goods in France would be exempt from VAT, but after that, you will be considered as performing a distance sale in France, and this supply should be subject to VAT. So for that VAT, so for that VAT on supply following the import, you can use and pay and declare the VAT via the IOSS. And if the IOSS is not applicable, so if you don't want to use it, or if it's not open to you, or if, I don't know, your number was not valid or something like that, there is two alternatives. Because, like I said, in that case, despite when you use the IOSS, because when you use the IOSS, it's always the seller that is considered as being liable for that. When the IOSS is not applicable, there is, again, two choices. You can have the importer being the supplier, or the importer can also be your client, so your B2C client. And then if the importer is a supplier, the place of supply would still be France. And what is quite easy for UK businesses is that if you don't use the IOSS, you would need to VAT register in France. So a normal VAT registration should be required to declare this transaction and pay related VAT. And contrary to the IOSS, and the case where IOSS is used, is that here import VAT should be paid. So you should pay VAT twice, first time on the import and after on the further sale. And because you are obliged to VAT register in France, this one would be deductible through your French VAT return. And now, if you decide with your client, or if you impose to your client that he would be the importer of record in France, so the importer is now the recipient, the import VAT would be payable by the customer. So, of course, usually in that case, what is put in place is that actually VAT is paid through an intermediary, like the transporter, the carrier. So in that case, the e-commerce regime also provides for a specific rule. And like I said, there would be in that case also simplified custom sets for declaration available. And now, what would be the rules if a platform is involved in the sale? So again, the EU rules actually are for that regime. The EU rules only applies when the threshold, so the value of the good, is less than 150. But in France, we have a peculiarity, because in France we have transposed the rules. Maybe it was a comment on dit surtransposition. It was it was over transposed because in France, if you are performing distance sale of imported goods, so from UK to France, for example, to a B2C client, even if no matter the value of the goods, under or above 150, the online platform would every time be liable for French VAT. So it is quite important to notice, because France are really over transport the EU rules. So we do not have at the moment. We do not know how this is going to be evolved, and maybe if this is going to be abolished, because it's actually contrary to the EU rules. But yeah, it's important to note. So so when we are using an OMP for this kind of transaction, actually the transaction would be split in two parts. A first sale would be considered as being performed from your business, the UK business, to the OMP, and after that, another sale from the OMP to the client. So it's kind of a fictitious sale between the UK seller and the OMP. And this one, because UK is now considered as a third country, should be considered as being outside the scope of French VAT. So for that sale, for the first sale to the OMP, you should not be required to charge French VAT. And also, you do not need to issue an invoice from French perspective. Yeah, and for the second sale, so for the distance sale of imported goods, it is the same that previously, meaning either you are using the IOSS, in that case, the OMP would not pay import VAT, but would pay VAT on the further sale. And if IOSS is not applicable, in that case, OMP would be always liable for French VAT. So never the client would be liable. So in that case, again, if the OMP does not use the IOSS, the OMP would need to be VAT registered in France. So yeah, this was just the e-commerce package. We have some clients that are thinking about maybe set up a hub, meaning set up a company, for example, in France or other EU countries, just not to have B2C sales from third countries. So yeah, what they want is having first B2B import, and after the hub in France, for example, would make the local supplies to the private individual customers, because they don't want to implement the e-commerce rule because it's too complicated. So it's important to notice that it can involve reorganization in the group, in the logistic aspects of your supply chain. So yeah, you can also decide to implement a hub in one country in the EU to avoid the application of the e-commerce package. Now we would like to make some comments about the supply of services. So if you are again a UK company supplying services to either a business or private cost for you. So firstly, for a B2B customer, so in the UK, the VAT principle should remain the same. What does it mean? It means that in principle, because your client is a business, no VAT should in principle be due for you in the UK. And of course, again, Bertie previously talked about intrastate return. It is the same for services. Previously, we had the ECC list for services that were due, and now it is not applicable anymore. And in terms of invoicing, of course, we are not specialized in UK invoicing rules, but actually it could be the invoice that you are issuing should, in principle, comply with UK rule in terms of invoicing. And what would be the rules in France? The normal rules would be that because your client is a B2B client, he should actually be the one liable for French VAT, which means that he should self-assess, so revert charge directly on its French VAT return, the French VAT. So it was quite similar than the rules that were previously applicable when UK was still in the EU, because it was the same. When the UK company was supplying a service to a French one, it was the same. The French customer had to self-assess VAT. So it does not change that much. What changed, and especially for UK businesses, is that now French invoicing requirement should be applicable. So additionally to the UK invoicing rules, the invoice should also comply with the French invoicing rules. And what changed particularly, it's the exemption mentioned, which is not reverse charge anymore. So you should not quote on your invoice reverse charge. You should quote a reference to Article 45 of the EU directive. So you can, like we indicated in the slide, you can say VAT not applicable, Article 44 of the EU directive. Yeah, also what is important to note in B2B, this rule would be the same no matter if the service is considered as a standard service or a service located physically taxable in France. So for example, if it is a service directly linked to real estate in France, it's going to be the same rule, meaning the French business should self-assess reverse charge French VAT. And for B2C customers now, the same principle remain applicable. So meaning in principle, the VAT is due on the seller at the seller place, so meaning UK. So it means that in France, the principle is that no VAT is due if you are selling services to a private client, but there are some exceptions and they are quite important. And the exception is notably applicable for, I think you already heard about this rule, is the use and enjoyment rules. So it is for services effectively used and consumed in France. So for that services, you have two options. So either you can register in France to apply French VAT because your client cannot because he's a private individual, or you can use the new one-stop shop regime to pay your VAT in France directly through the portal. And yes, we wanted to make a focus on the electronic broadcasting and telecom services, which are actually part of the use and enjoyment rules. And for that service, the mini one-stop shop regime was already applicable. I think it is from 2015 or 2017, and it has been improved and open in new cases. And now, as from July 2021, so it should still be applicable. But what is also important is that if you were previously registered through the MOS as UK business, now you need to re-register because you are not part of the EU anymore. So your previous EU MOS number is not applicable anymore. And yes, like I said, the MOS regime would be also extended to other use and enjoyment services, so other services taxable in the EU, such as rental of mean of transport. It can also be used for that kind of services. And the last part of our presentation is dedicated to VAT refund and VAT compliance.
Yes, so we already mentioned the recovering of the French VAT incurred by UK companies. So you have two ways to recover the French VAT incurred. The different ways are depending on if the UK company is VAT registered in France or not. If it's the case and VAT returns are filed each month, the procedure to be applied is a domestic one, meaning that you need, if you want to recover, you have a VAT credit and you want to recover it. To be refunded by the FTA, a SERFA must be filed together with the VAT return. It can be on a monthly basis. You can ask, the company can ask each month the refund of the VAT credit, but the VAT credit may also be carried forward on the VAT returns for months and months, and then when there is a big amount of VAT to be recovered, a VAT refund may be asked. The most important is to report. There is a 2 years delay to report the VAT amount supported on the VAT returns, but when it's reported and it's well reported each month, there is no time limit. The other way is for UK companies which are not registered in France, because in France you cannot register it's not a choice. You're VAT registered in France when you are liable for VAT and you perform transactions for which you are liable for VAT, which require VAT registration. But in other cases you cannot be registered, and if you incur French VAT in France, either by import some goods or just by purchasing some services or goods in France, you can ask the VAT refund through the 13th directive procedure. So for this, we said at the beginning of the presentation that no fiscal representative was needed, but for the VAT refund request through the 13th directive procedure, a fiscal representative must be appointed. And this is the only case to date which require a fiscal rep.
Established in France, actually.
A French fiscal rep established in France. And there is a little change in this VAT refund procedure from 1st July 2021, since there is a new procedure all online. Today, the original invoices needed to be provided to the FTA, and now everything will be online. This is
simplifying the
exactly. And with the pandemic for 1 year, we just constated that most of the time the FTA accepts online procedure and accepts copies of invoices, since the current situation does not allow to provide originals. So this is actually, I think, a good point, and it's easier. And there is, yes, the request cannot be for a period longer than 1 calendar year, but a maximum of 5 declarations per year can be applied for. And this is a summary of UK and French compliance obligations. The most important change is the obtention of a NEORI, which was not required before Brexit. And after that, there is but we already mentioned it, but the export declaration. Yes, I start with the UK. It's easier. Be VAT registered in the UK to perform exports, report export transactions in the UK VAT returns. So UK VAT compliance may be required, and either directly or through a supplier of services like EY can do this for French company who exports from UK. No intrastate returns required. We already talked about that. And from a French perspective, the EORI is required also, and the indirect customs representative is needed. If VAT registered in France, import transaction should be reported in the French VAT returns. If not, but as we said, in 1 year, no, in 6 months. Actually.
Yeah, it's going to be mandatory to be registered and to file a VAT returns if you are performing import in France, because VAT reverse charge for import VAT would now be the main rule. So no optional. So yeah.
Yeah, but to date there is no need to be VAT registered. Only import transactions are carried out, because other transactions performed in France may require such registration. No arrival intrastate returns due in France for imports from the UK, and no need a fiscal rep except for the VAT refund request through the 13th procedure.
And we almost finished. We just wanted to make a little focus on the IT changes. That are triggered by the Brexit, because like we said, there is a change for the Northern Irish VAT and EORI number, which should now have a XI prefix. For the tax codes, if you are using automatic tax code in your system, they should be updated to reflect the change from the UK as non-EU country. So I don't know if IT suppliers already did that, implement that automatically, but at least it worth to check if the change has been correctly performed. So yeah, some EU transactions should now be coded as import or as export. And also to be aware of the changes involved by the Northern Ireland Protocol, because like we said at the beginning of the presentation, there is a total different regime between if we are talking about goods, supply of goods, because for that Northern Ireland would still be considered as part of the EU, but not for services. So it should be ensured that the IT system is able to deal with this distinction. And I think we are on time almost.
Thank you very much, Bertie and Pauline, for this presentation. I think it was very informative presentation, and we will send the PowerPoint presentation to all the participants this morning. There was one question from Cameron. What is the difference between indirect and direct representative?
The direct representative is not liable for the payment of customs and duties and import VAT. Okay. So usually customs agents prefer this way of representation, but the indirect representative is, on the contrary, is liable, meaning that if the importer, the company, does not pay import VAT or customs duties, the FTA can ask for the payment to the customs representative. But for non-EU companies, to be able to import in France, an indirect representative is needed, is required.
Yeah, and this is why indirect representative usually ask for a guarantee.
Exactly.
For that payment.
Exactly.
Yeah. So sometimes it can be hard actually to find an indirect rep because they don't want to be involved.
Of course, and we can understand that when there are 1,000 clients, you cannot be indirect representative for all of them. But
and with the Brexit,
this is one of the difficulties we met with the Brexit, is to find such a kind of representation for our clients.
Okay, but I'm sure that at the chamber we have some members who do that, maybe Eurofiscalis.
Yeah.
And so maybe we can put you in touch with them actually.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yes.
There.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. So I'm the CEO of Eurofiscalis. So our interest for the Brexit and how to deal with all the changes and specificities regarding the businesses and operators in this new framework is very important to keep in touch with. And moreover, they are coming with new changes of e-commerce operations. So both of them are very important, and it is so important to keep in touch our clients with. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, Catherine, because I think that we will have also the document. So it's a pleasure for us to participate, and we'll keep in touch together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I will introduce you both. Then like this, you can maybe work together.
Thank you. Perfect.
You're welcome. That's the reason of the agenda, you know,
to create relationship.
promote
Create
and
contact.
transform. So I think that's exactly what I like to do, and I'm very pleased if it can be done like that. Is there any other questions? If there is any, so anywhere we can end the session. Thank you very much to all of you for being present. Thank you, Bertie, and thank you, Pauline. And we keep in touch and have a nice day.